309. Thank you so much. And looking at the agenda, the first subject for discussion would be the community forum, and we have no requests for that. The approval of the minutes, because we do not have a quorum, we're not able to do number 3, and there are no action items. Committee reports, none, and we could talk about the National Night Out, if nothing else. So we'll come back to that one. Okay, and the executive secretary's report, if you have anything that you wanted to share, or again, we can hold those off till the next one.
Yeah, thank you, Pastor. I don't really have any specifics to discuss in the executive secretary report, unless you have questions on the reports that have been submitted and hopefully reviewed. Only thing I would say, I would couple that with some of the community initiatives that we've done, which would be the National Night Out, which I thought was a great success. Kudos to staff, particularly Tim Doherty and Teresa Rodriguez, as well as all of the maintenance staff that made sure that they were present to assist in cleanup, and there were even some cooking and, assisting throughout all of the sites. So kudos and much appreciation to them, but particularly Tim and Teresa for coordinating and pulling the committees together to ensure that we had a presence on National Night Out. And thank you to Pastor, I have to say a special thank you for ensuring that there was much representation through various levels of law enforcement, which I think this is the first year since we've done it here at the Housing Authority that we've had different levels of law enforcement. So I would love and hope that that will continue in the future, because that was a great success. It was good to know, introduce ourselves, and then also for them to recruit in the community. So that was a really good, add-on to the event.
Because I didn't get there, a quick question.
Yes.
Were they well received by the people that were there? They seem to be the ones that I did see, but sometimes, the community, they have a standoffish type of a.
I would say they were, based on my observation and interaction, I would say that they were. I will say that my niece accompanied me at all of the sites, and every single one of them were talking to her, trying to, recruit her, gave her their cards, and knowing that she was not from the area, they were saying, well, if you decide to move here, look me up, even Sheriff Apple. I mean, they were, and then others were around and they were communicating with as well. So I would say on my, based on my observation, they were well received, and, there was some good, positive interaction. I thought it was a good thing.
I did Ezra Prentice Crate and Storage in the south of town,
Arbor Hill?
Ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was very observable, and seeing everybody doing what they came to do, they really did.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad they recruiting a lot of guys and ladies come and recruit to come.
Yeah,
sure.
they did.
Because they was real good.
Yeah, that's one of the big things that they're talking about now, is getting women and people of color, within the ranks. And that's what I'm promoting with them, and that's why we're trying to get them into the inner city areas, so that, they have access to people of color and women. And they're doing it, but we got to change the stigma in the minds of the people that are underserved, because the cops are the enemy. And so a lot of them are not going to even consider that as a viable profession, even though, especially with state police and people like that, they can make $150,000 to $170,000 a year.
That's what they were telling me.
Yeah, they can make good money, even starting off really well, almost, maybe $80,000 or something like that within 6 months. So
they were very receptive in terms of, also saying, if you have any questions, if you're in doubt, reach out, They were really, I thought, very effective.
And so, that's not the last time. The next time we have maybe an improving your quality of life meeting, we'll concentrate more on even the recruiting. Maybe we could do that throughout Albany Housing. I think that'll be good.
But thank you for that.
And, oh, 100%. Anytime, anything that has to deal with cops, police, attorneys, and stuff like that, we got it, okay?
All right.
Because it's needed.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we just need to know where to go. I get so many calls. We got another one today. So many calls, you know, people just don't know who to turn to.
Yeah.
And all I do is just refer them, this is the person, and then because I put my name on it, you know, not saying that they get special attention, but they do.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's not just a cold call, you know, that's so, make a long story short, I'm glad that God's got me in that position, you know? So anyway, but it was a great night for, you know, for the ones that I've seen. And, you know, hats off to you for leading the charge. I know you gave kudos to everybody else, Chiquita, but you led the charge. You let them know, you laid the vision out, and they took it and they ran with it. And so thank you. And, you know, I'm blessed to be a part of the Albany Housing. I didn't realize how much stuff you guys did. And so Cheyenne, you know, I know Chiquita couldn't do it without you, and you couldn't do it, you know, without Brian.
We all rely on each other.
They can do it without me.
So, no, that was great. And then just an update on the Capitol South Campus Center. We signed an agreement with the selected program delivery partner, and oh my goodness, Hudson Valley.
Yep.
EOC. They started to move in and get things, you know, ready August 1st. That's when the contract, yes.
So
The contract began, the contracts began August 1st. So right now, what they're doing, they've had their engineers and their IT staff in there just kind of rewiring because, you know, the previous delivery partner took all that, their properties. So we removed furniture. We removed, you know, we were in the process of removing some of the furniture, most of the furniture that they did not want, and equipment, and putting it elsewhere so that they can bring in and, you know, get the space ready for learning. So hopefully there will be a soft rollout, to the community at some point. They're coordinating that once they have an idea, you know, when things are ready to go and in place. So we have those discussions happening right now, so.
I think they're gonna
That's
do well.
exciting. I do too.
They got a good
I'm excited,
vision.
for their rollout. I
Yeah.
really am. So looking forward to that.
Beautiful.
And that really concludes an update that I have for the community. I don't think I'm missing anything, and if I am, I apologize at this point. Cheyenne just reminded me that the scholarship application that we do on an annual basis is extended. I don't know what the due date. Okay, so the middle of August must be the end date. I know that they posted it on Instagram, but at any rate, it's the one that we do every year, where it's the 3 tiers, 3,000, 2,000, 1,000, and then they all get courtesy of Brian Krimmer and his firm. They will all receive a laptop.
Ah, good.
You talking about down at that training?
Pardon?
You talking about
No, every year, the housing authority, well, a few years ago, oh goodness, I can't remember how long, but as part of, the city's initiative, the housing authority established a scholarship program for residents, and Section 8 participants, or program participants, for educational or workforce advancement. So basically what we do every year is we put out, you know, a competition for individuals to submit interest of, you know, for the scholarship, and there's 3 tiers, 3,000, 2,000, 1,000. So we do this every year. And this year, along with last year, I believe you did as well. Did you do last year?
I think this.
Okay, this is the first year, but Brian Krimmer and his firm donated laptops for the winner. Yeah,
Awesome.
so that's exciting.
And did y'all have winners?
Well, it's extended, so we're waiting on the applications, and then there'll be,
Well, they
reviewed and
finish-
then selected.
They have to finish that course to
Mhm.
receive it.
Well, no, it's to help you get to the course, to help you pay for it or get your supplies or whatever you
gotcha.
need in order for you to, complete your, the semester, I should say.
So is it open to the housing authority residents?
It's open to residents and Section 8 participants.
Do they have information on that? The
Mhm.
residents?
We sent it out, text, everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
We gotta talk about it though, when we receive it, because I didn't receive it, so.
Okay, well, that I will have to check and see
And
with,
when I'm out in the
Cheyenne and
lobby,
Tim.
because I talk about everything in
Okay.
the lobby, wherever I'm at, around the housing authority, I stir them up.
If I'm not mistaken, it went out a while ago
It went out,
to all
it's been going
residents.
out once a week, and then it's also on
Okay,
social
give me
media.
this, so I can elaborate
Yeah.
on it so they can know.
Okay,
Could you be surprised who'll get in it?
I'll be happy to, well,
And we got a new
Bill sent it.
resident.
More the merrier.
yeah.
Yes.
I don't know how many, did they report how many applications you've gotten so far?
One.
One.
All right, he's gonna get all three, right? 3 laptops. So that should be incentive for others to get,
That's
so,
That's what we extended.
Pastor, what the old saying, motto?
I'm not sure which one, there's so many.
The harvest is plentiful,
Oh, right, the laborers are few.
the laborers are few.
For sure. Okay,
That's it.
Chiquita, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
What
Well,
did you-
that concludes my, report. I have no
Oh,
additional.
we got to get going.
I don't
Okay.
know if you
Now,
want to
with-
go back.
Yeah, I'd like to go back if it's okay, Brian.
Yeah, I was just gonna follow up, Pastor, you had asked me to look a little bit further into how we can get more involved in contracting for, women and minority-owned businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So I did take a look at that, and, so we can do more to encourage, businesses to bid, but in the end, we can't change how we decide who the winning bid is. So for instance, if it's a pure price thing and a particular entity comes in with the lowest price, then obviously we need to pick that lowest price. But we can establish lists that would have, the contact information for minority and women-owned businesses. We can, take steps to get better involvement by those owners of businesses. But in the end, the bid is the bid.
It's bid.
Part of it, yeah. So I know we had talked about that last time, and I just wanted to confirm, because I was pretty sure, but I wasn't 100% sure.
Yeah.
So, we could probably do better trying to figure out who to get these bid proposals out to, but it's getting them back in that's the important part.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And I know in my work with, Eastern Contractors, Association, African-American companies, most minority, and women companies, they're not positioned to do that.
Right.
They don't have the capacity to take
That has
on
been our
a lot.
challenges.
Yeah, and so my thing is if they can bite off, the ones that do get the contract, if they can bite off little bits and pieces, at least initially to get them to some, MWBEs, that would be great.
Mhm.
And we have tried that in the past.
Mhm.
And I will say, we've tried it with, snow removal,
Mhm.
landscaping. We've broken out, even painting. And we've gotten little to no participation. I think, as you said, the capacity has been the challenge.
Mhm.
That has been the biggest challenge,
It
the
is.
capacity. Janitorial has been one, that we've tried, on the building, because we had janitorial services for certain apartment buildings, and we did not get a lot of participation or response
Yeah.
even then.
Yeah. I think there's only
So,
2 or
it's a
3
lot
of them in the area, and they're at capacity. They
Yeah.
can't hire people, and I know Herb Ackerman, he's in that boat. He's got more business coming in than he has people
Yeah.
to fulfill.
That has
If he
been-
takes on more, he's not going to be able to fulfill it. So, but Brian, thank you, for following up.
If you have access to lists of companies that do certain sort of work on, I think if you provided those to me, I can get them to the right person at the housing authority. We can make sure they're at least getting copies
Mhm.
of what's going out.
Do you know if they're working with the Black Chamber of Commerce?
What's that?
Do you know if they're working with the Black Chamber of Commerce at this point? Because they would have a list.
Yeah.
The Capital Region and
The,
the Albany one.
right, there's
The
2.
Albany, no, because that's fairly new.
Okay.
I know in the past, we have used the Black Chamber of Commerce to get some information. I can't tell you from the most recent ones if he has, but we have in the past.
Okay, you're not even sure if he has one, but I'll check with Corey and see if he has that, then we can forward it to you.
Great.
Okay? And maybe Eastern Contracting has that, because a lot of times they keep
Well, so.
those types of records.
Almost all public works through grants, they strongly encourage minority women-owned businesses to be subs, right? So, my guess is the larger contractors have lists of smaller contractors that they sub out.
And we try to send them out to
Yeah.
them as well.
Yeah.
Okay,
And we have to have a certain level in terms of our public, contracting. They're required to continue to maintain or reach a certain level to carry, but, I can't remember the percentage, it depends, but it's under Section 3.
yeah, it was
program, but
20,
it's not
it used to
Section
be,
3, but
well,
it's
there's
also-
different levels, depending on what you want. If it's a
Yeah.
distributorship, I think it's 10%. If it's laborers, I think it's 30%.
Right, there's subcontractors and then there's the
Yeah.
employees
So,
that they look at for the Section 3 part.
yeah. Okay, well, we'll keep working
Well,
on
we'll
it.
continue
And
to
it's good,
improve it.
and, something, I think it's good that we talk about it every so often, so that it's in the records, that we're actually moving towards that, at least trying, okay? And since Melvina's here, we do have a quorum,
Yes,
okay? And with that, if you don't mind, we can back up and we can at least vote on the minutes from July on page 3 of our notes there. It's where it begins. I'd like to make a motion. Do I have to make a motion for that, to vote on them?
Yeah, if you don't
Make
mind.
it official? Okay, I'd like to make a motion to vote on the, not to vote, but to review the minutes from July. Okay. Second? Okay. Fantastic. Okay, and any questions, discussions?
All in favor on that motion?
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
I'm not in favor. All in favor. Okay, everybody, it's unanimous consent. Okay, thank you. Okay, so, any questions, discussion on any, of the articles that we have? Very good. Okay, any questions, concerns, or, additions, corrections to the?
One thing I want to add, I do want to share, if I may, we continue to do our due diligence in collecting the past due rent. We are, sending notices. Some, residents are coming to court. But one of the challenges, I will say, and, that we're noticing is misinformation being given to our residents, prior. And I'll ask Brian to chime in also. There's been some, organizations that have, put out some misinformation that has created, confusion when we present them with the facts. Some have become very challenging in terms of dealing with, and trying to, meet on a mutual understanding and trying to help the tenants themselves remain in their home and solve the issue. I don't know what that, how can I say it? I don't know the word I'm looking for. Solution, I guess, is the best one. You know, staff has, you know, continued to respond to calls, emails, address concerns, fill out the documentation, and yet we're still, in some point, still, you know, faced with adversity. When it comes to trying to recoup some of the, you know, the money that is owed to us. So I don't know, Brian, you're in court.
So I think there's a couple of things. One is, believe it or not, we're still dealing with kind of the early pandemic-related issues where people feel they didn't have to pay their rent, right, during that period of time, and that now that we're well past it, that they don't have to go backwards and pay that rent. So that's one issue. Another issue is there are a couple of the, what I'll call, tenant advocacy groups that I think are less, they're not making it easy for us to make it easy for the tenant. Meaning, we're cutting deals with people that, you know, I had a deal approved in front of the court a couple of weeks ago. Person owed, I think, $18,000 in rent. $50 a month we were asking them to pay, plus their rent moving forward. So everybody gets a extremely reasonable deal. Mm-hmm. Some of the advocacy groups are, I don't want to say they're talking tenants out of a deal like that, but they're just raising issues that make the tenant hesitant to reach deals such as that. And that doesn't help the tenant in any way, shape, or form. So we're dealing with that. We're trying to talk to the advocacy groups about, you know, what our goals are, what we're trying to accomplish, and how they can kind of help us do that. But I think some of them come in and they're looking for the
fight,
head banging, yes, and it doesn't really serve any purpose, because you come to court, like I've told you 100 times, if a tenant comes to court, we reach a deal with you. Well, we really, you know, we want to start ticking away at the past due rent, but make sure that rent is being paid moving forward, most important. So, and I think we're hoping to get past it. I think it has probably gotten a little bit worse, that issue, in the recent months.
Yeah.
But hopefully it'll turn back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's no interest on back rents that's due. It's just would pay it till it's paid off.
Right.
And if they choose to leave before they pay off, like this particular person, $18,000, more than likely they'll leave before it's actually paid. They're still obligated to that.
Yeah.
$50, am I correct?
Yeah, so, I mean, something like that, I mean, they'd have to live here a couple of lifetimes to pay it off.
Yeah.
But we're not doing it. They still remain responsible, but we're not trying to collect judgments or reach into people's bank accounts to get their money or anything like that. If people leave, it's noted on whatever the systems are, but we're not chasing people for the money after they leave.
No, but it does come up in the system, so if they try to get housing elsewhere, it'll pop up a red flag, and they will have to pay it before they get assisted elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's even through social services too, that count, it won't only count that through housing. It won't count through like they go through social services, they need services, right?
No, this is just housing related. Yeah. Any federally assisted programs, if you leave owing money, you have to resolve that issue before another program will assist you.
How many people now are we looking at that's in arrears?
It's,
That hasn't reached an agreement.
How many is left?
well,
Lot.
there's quite a few, and I can't read this report, so that's
Okay.
on me.
No, it's okay.
Type is so small.
It's more than five.
Yeah, it makes sense.
More than 5 people. So you're saying they got, the applicant that's working the case for those tenants, supposed to be helping them with their rent?
I don't know if they're necessarily there to help them pay their rent as it is to, represent on their behalf. And what is happening is Mike, I'm sorry, I'm so used to Mike, as Brian has stated, what's happening is we come up with a reasonable deal that we're understanding, you know, look, for this example, the person owed $18,000 and we had a deal at $50 a month. And the particular advocacy groups have, you know, I don't know, created an environment where they become hesitant to enter into an agreement with us, but then there's no agreement, and then that issue is still
And that's
lingering, and it makes it worse.
Yeah,
The,
that's worse.
the balance gets larger because they still don't pay, and so it just keeps
And they're not
growing and
paying
growing and
forward
growing,
either?
yeah. Because based on that particular advocacy, they're not necessarily being told to continue to pay their current rent and, you know, enter into an agreement. They're looking at trying to find loopholes where, you know, why they should not pay their rent.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Excuse me, are they paying their current rent or?
In most cases, no.
Oh,
so what would happen in that case is we can't reach a deal, it gets put down for a trial. Trial would be months down the road though, so in the meantime,
They're not paying.
they may not be paying their rent, which makes the number larger, makes it more likely that they're not ever gonna be able to catch up. So, and I
They basically help them dig a deeper hole,
yeah, and I just
what
think
they're doing.
they raise issues, you know, they're entitled to provide them with information, of course. But it just, their approach is questioning sometimes whether it is a good deal. Like, how could $50 a month against $18,000 not be a good deal? So it's a little bit troubling. I think that they could work a little bit better with us and try to tell the tenants that, you know, if we wanted to be difficult, we could have a trial. We could have the judge determine that $18,000 is due, and the person could be evicted 14 days later. We don't want to do that.
Of course.
But that's a position they put us in by going to a trial on it.
Yeah.
right, being
Right. So hopefully things will get better.
You don't come to an agreement that states a reduction in the amount that they owe?
So that's the one thing we don't do, is
Okay.
we don't reduce the rent,
Mhm.
but we give them
Forever to pay.
an unimaginable period of time to pay it
Well, we
back.
can't reduce the rent. We're scored by our our accounts receivable.
Mhm.
We're scored by the calculations that, you know, we get
Even
audited.
past due?
All of
Because
the
those are
above.
past due?
Yep,
Okay.
we're scored by that. Because it's really, when you look at it, it's account receivable and how much are you collecting. Now, I will say in general, we're collecting more now than we were last year and the year before, so the percentage is higher, but that has nothing to do with the past due rents that is owed. Last number I checked, which was yesterday, was $2.7 million, with almost $700,000 in repayment agreements.
Mhm.
So that's over $3 million that we are still owed and will probably never see at the rate that we're going. So no, we can't reduce anyone's rent based on what they did not pay. Your rent is your rent. We calculate it based on your income and what you are entitled to pay or required to pay. And that's, you know, you're already getting, in many cases, depending on where you live, 30, you know, what do you call the subsidized, rate.
So it's almost nothing for a lot of them. And other housing authorities are going through the same thing continually.
It's a challenge
because
across
we've had
the
it.
state, yes.
And where do we fit in as far as percentage-wise? When you look at everybody else, are we high?
We are higher because we're larger
Okay.
in that sense, and I'm not
Well,
not comparing myself to
percentage-wise-
NYCHA.
Okay, but percentage-wise, that would kind of bring us into, you know, more of an equal type of a thing. When I say percentage-wise, you know, the percentage of,
No, I'm gonna say no, because depending on where you are, they're not having the challenges that we're having, and when, families are being brought, you know, to court. The advocacy groups are working with housing authorities and understanding the situations that we're in as well, and also understanding the situations families are in, and getting them to, understand, hey, you want a roof over your head, you also have an obligation as a tenant to pay your rent. And because you have fallen behind, and understanding that things may have happened, but, you're required to pay this. So you have some groups that are understanding and, communicating with, the residents, and then you have some that are not. I just came from an ED meeting, and there are some that have challenges, and then there's some that, not so much, I'll just say.
Okay.
Am I,
No, I think it runs the whole,
Yeah.
it runs the whole gamut. I think,
depending on where you are?
if I had to guess, disproportionately, it's the larger ones that are, I mean, I represent some of the smaller ones in the local area. They don't have nearly the issues, and I think a lot of that was kind of, in the beginning, from a pandemic perspective, some of the misinformation that was going on here as compared to some of the other smaller communities that have a housing authority. So
Like, I know Rensselaer had much less, like, they barely had any challenges with residents not paying their rent. They were sending the notices like we were. They were, just, providing, information in terms of resources, but just, I was told they sent their notices and people understood that they had to pay their rent, and they paid it. But
I do the evictions for Cohoes Housing and What If Elite Housing, and my recollection is that we're well past, there's not a number that remains consistent, like the 3.4 here. The number never got that high anyway, but it was cleared up, and there's no money due that was accrued back in 2000 and 2001.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think a lot of it is because of the misinformation, for our particular tenants here.
Mm-hmm.
Will it affect their credit score, or will it go against their credit score?
It's gotta. It doesn't affect their credit score.
It doesn't? We don't report it.
Oh, okay.
Why not? I mean, because you wanna get a car, you wanna get a house, that should be like, it's like, I guess I don't know, maybe they looked at it that way, but try to recoup some of your money, like, well, if you got a low credit score, we know you can't get one because you owe this $18,000
Mm-hmm.
on your credit report. And now you wanna get this car, which is gonna cost you much more to get, right?
100%.
Or a housing, or getting
100%.
or getting a house, a home.
I don't know, Brian, has that thought gone through your mind, and
Well,
what's your thoughts on it?
My personal view would be that,
If I was one behind, I wouldn't want it on my credit report. I just wanted, just being honest. If it was me, I wouldn't want it on there, but the system is set up so that it should be.
but are you adding insult to injury? Are you making matters worse for people by putting it on their credit report? I would, that's a policy determination that.
We attempted years and years ago to work with a collection agency. I believe after so many attempts, there was an understanding that it would go to, it would become one of those, what do you call it, when it's on your credit? It's not a revolving collection. They've later determined that the amount we were spending in comparison to what we were collecting, it wasn't worth
Now that
it.
makes sense.
So we have not addressed or looked at it since, because it just wasn't, yeah.
Yeah,
Can I
that
say
makes sense.
something?
And, identify yourself, please.
This is, Commissioner Mark Bob Semple. How you all doing?
Hey, welcome, sir.
Well, I've been listening to you guys. Personally, I think everyone has different ways of, people have different values, people have different ways of thinking. I think when the pandemic happened, I think the rollout, and I know that everyone wants to defend what was rolled out, but again, there was so much misinformation out there. People were told people heard different things. You know, in the world of communications, if you don't really explain it to folks, people hear different things or people want to hear different things. And so part of me feel like, you know, the whole credit thing, it's like they were told that you didn't, you know, they heard, and someone would say, well, that's their fault. But in a sense, you know, I always caution people, you know, because not everyone have the same common sense. Not everyone hear things the same way. People just, you know, they just don't have the same understanding of how the world works, is what I'm saying, you know? And so we're quick to say, well, you know, people did this, people did this. People have, you know, they know. And yes, people are trying to take advantage. There are some of those people that are trying to take advantage. And then, but I'm mainly talking about the people that are in need. Those are the folks that I want to really put a voice at. But unfortunately, there's those other people that are taking advantage. So I just want to chime in with that, if that makes sense.
It does.
It does.
And to your point, let me be clear, we're not looking at, anyone's credit or adding it to anyone's credit report. I was explaining that we tried that in the past, years and years ago, and, we realized with the collection agency, the amount that we were collecting in comparison to what we were paying, it was not worthwhile. So I'm predicting that that's probably the same case today. But I do want to make sure that everyone understands that we understand that not everyone thinks or receives information in the same manner, which is why we put boots to the ground, knocked on doors, sent out messages after messages, paid United Tenants $50,000 to go to our sites, table, to talk with our residents, to explain what what they were obligated to do during this pandemic, whether it be report a change in your income, an increase in your daycare costs, whatever it might be that so that we can either evaluate what their current rent portion was so that it could be adjusted, or if there was no adjustment, providing them the resources if other things may have been affected by the pandemic so that we can help them, so that we ourselves would not be in this predicament, nor them being in this predicament. But unfortunately, whatever reason, after $3 million, everybody seems to have heard the same message. And so I find that hard to believe. And I find it, very difficult today to be expected, although we do everything that we can, staff and, the board, to ensure the safety and the quality of the homes are maintained on a day-to-day basis, given the challenges that we deal with every day, whether it be repairs, whether it be difficult tenants, challenges with, criminal activity, and dealing with, lease enforcement. These are things that we deal with every day, but it also costs. And so at some point, if we're not all on the same page as community organizations and understanding that one affects the other, it's gonna hit the fan. And we are dealing with, and this is something that I really wanna lay out, we're dealing with high cost insurance to even maintain buildings. We just got a building, we had to cover a building, a property, that was at one point in the 30,000s for insurance, jumped up to over 200,000. That is not sustainable, and if we're not able to minimally collect our rents that we are due, that's gonna be a challenge in the future. And then to continue to be community partners, which is why we have to pull back from, supporting these, various organizations and initiatives in the community, because, you know, it has to come from somewhere. And our priority is the quality and safety of our residents, as well as our employees. And, you know, at this point, it can't just be us saying, you know, we are owed the money. It just can't be. And I do understand families and individuals have challenges, but we also have challenges, and we have a job to do. And it's critical to ensuring that people have roofs over their heads.
You mentioned getting everybody on the same page, Chiquita. What do you think is going to take to do that? Because we're talking about organizations that don't want to in years.
I don't know what it's going to take. I honestly don't know. I think, you know, there's a combination of, you know, challenges with staffing, you know, capacity. There's challenges with not fully understanding what we do, who we are, and, you know, not wanting to understand what we do and who we are. Everyone seems to think that all of our families are low-income families. They're not. We, you know, majority of our families have income that come in. Very few have zero income. And there might be, you know, there's some that have fixed income, but we are not the traditional public housing, quote unquote, that people may recall years and years ago when it first started, where you had to, you know, you were very low income. This is not the case. We have individuals here making over $100,000.
Wow.
You know, it's true. They work, they get up every day, and depending on the definition of over income, we pursue that too, but there's policies that we have to follow for that. You know, they're allowed to stay for 2 years before we can deem them over income and, you know, pursue lease termination to allow that opening for another family on the waiting list. So I don't know the answer, but I think first and foremost, trying to understand and see who we are today, because where we were 20 years ago is not the same that we are today. And I think that's a lot of the misinformation. They think that all of our properties are public housing, and they're not. There's tax credit. We have families that pay market rate rent here. You know, so we're not, you know, I don't know. I don't know the answer.
I don't know the answer, but a suggestion I think I mentioned this before. I think we need to, like everything else, we need to educate people. And how do you do that? You host information sessions. I mean, because I think I totally agree 100%, 1,000%. Because I think people lump us in with government. And right now the government is giving out money like crazy. And so everyone thinks that all government agencies now have money. And so ignorance is part of the issue. And I think we should be, not just us, I think everyone should be
You need to get started.
Everyone should be, thank you. Everyone should be doing this process because it's an education piece.
And I agree with
But you
you,
pay
and I think, you know, we, at the beginning, as I said, we tried to get ahead of this. And then when the misinformation was put out there in the media, and through various resources, we were in, you know, response mode. And at that point, no one wanted to hear what we had to say or believe what we had to say. I don't know what else we could do. I've spoken till I'm blue in the face to those who I would say could help understand, help others understand, which I will say there were some, you know, individuals and organizations that fully did understand once I was able to have these conversations. But at that point, the misinformation was spread, you know, the incorrect information was spread, was already out there. We weren't given the benefit of the doubt at the beginning. We weren't, you know, contacted to clarify the information. So,
But that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's the housing authority. I think it could be elected officials, churches, where people are at is where we need to go. It shouldn't be the housing authority. Is trusted messengers we have to get the message to. You know what I mean? Because they're gonna think you're just not telling the truth. And I've talked to people already. People are like, they're federal government. They have money. And I'm
well, I
like,
think part of it is the culture over the years that
Yeah.
it was, the community was made to believe we had, you know, a bottomless pot of money. I don't know. But our funds are restricted, you know, and we have bills. We don't have money like people think we have.
well, I don't think, right, any government entity have money. All money are restricted.
And you can't use it,
You know,
right?
and you can't just use it.
No.
But there are people out there who think otherwise, you know?
Well,
And,
my job is to ensure, and and then one thing is to change that culture, and I feel as though we're moving in the right direction. I said, but, more importantly, I have a fiscal responsibility to ensure that we can maintain
Yeah.
and sustain our properties as well as our employees. And that is my priority.
Yeah.
A part of that is making sure that we do our job
Mhm.
as it relates to collecting our rent, enforcing the rules, whether it be, you know, someone who's not paying their rent or someone who's violating their lease. Because the bottom line is, there are still people out there that are waiting, have been waiting. And if there's individuals that don't want to abide by the rules and, you know, uphold their obligations to the lease, there's people that are on the waiting list that do.
and two things. The housing authority is not the only landlord that's dealing with this. You know, there's other entities. But also, the workforce, employment, also was damaged by the pandemic because people were given money to stay home. And people are still trying to stay home
Right, and get the money.
and get the money.
And
And,
this is an important thing, the mindset.
right,
And that's the problem.
yep,
Education system. School, know what's going on in that school, know who's your teacher. It's the mindset, everything's always been this,
Yeah.
this,
yep.
in the workforce. And that's the mindset we have to get back to people into saying, you always think your hands can always be out. Have to use those 10 little fingers to get what you want, to work, to get what you want. But it's just not just here, it's just all over, just periodically, people think.
Yeah, it made it worse. I just,
Linda, you had started to say, the changing of the guards. I thought you started a sentence that said that we need a change of the guard or something.
No,
That wasn't that,
That wasn't-
okay. So,
maybe, well,
I'm hearing things.
I'm my great, I don't remember.
Can I just say this, I must say that, you know, since the pandemic happened, I've watched you reach out to numerous agencies to get that message across. I've asked numerous people for help in getting that message across. I've watched you sit in meetings and explain over and over again what was gonna happen if this message didn't get out. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that you did what you needed to do as far as reaching out to everyone who you possibly could to get that message out.
I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt,
Thank
you know,
you.
the,
How you've been reaching, just to feel that.
I mean,
mindset.
everyone,
Yeah.
constantly, you know, without even being asked to. She went above and beyond to get that message out to everyone she possibly could, letting them know that this was going to happen. And it wasn't, you know, she was trying to protect the residents from this happening.
here we are. Going forward, do we receive enough, whereas we're not relying on our reserves to pay our monthly bills?
Well, I will say, we can maintain at this point, but I will be perfectly honest with you. If the insurance issue is going the way that it is going, it is not sustainable. And that's a whole nother issue within itself. They are using, many of the, with this last incident that I shared, the insurance companies are using this system that provides a crime score. It's, in my opinion, redlining. It's based on zip codes. It doesn't define the type of crime that it is. This last development went through 30 insurance companies that failed to cover us. We had no one to cover us. We had less than 24 hours to ensure that we have insurance. Because obviously, if you can't insure a building, you can't house families. You would have, that they are not protected. So we had no choice but to sign an, insurance binding agreement that went from 36,000, if I'm not mistaken, 37,000 to 237,000.
But can't we?
If our insurance is going like that for every property because of this quote-unquote crime rate, it's not sustainable. That development itself is not sustainable at that rate on an annual basis. It is not. To add on to not being able to collect the rent, to add on to not even being able to rid some of the problems that might, I'm not saying that the crime rates are based on what's happening even on our properties. It's mainly within the zip code. But, it's something that's gotta give. So to answer your question, right now, we're okay, but if this happens next year, I can't guarantee you.
But is there something we can, I'm not an expert in this, but I know there were people who was price gouging. That sounds
That sounds like price gouging. But
from
insurance,
36.
but the insurance industry is kind of unregulated. That's the bad part. They justify it,
Give me a second.
and they just go ahead and do pretty much what they want,
There,
and how they want it.
yeah,
Lords of London is a perfect example.
yep.
They do what they want. They're running the country.
So, to answer your question, there's twofold, and I'm gonna let Cheyenne add to it as well as, I'm gonna say current insurance manager, because we don't have one right now. But this is not the only development that we're dealing with. I just had to sign one yesterday that is at risk of increasing to that level. But fortunately, they have given us a contingency plan for this particular development where we're required to do certain things so that we can keep it at a lower, rate. But that's just 2 properties,
Sure.
out of 16 developments. But, some are public housing, so those are a little easier. But this is affecting even our ability to obtain permanent insurance for development, projects, either current and on the way. Because insurance companies, they don't wanna cover us. And then if you add any supportive services program and funding to this, we're hearing they're shutting us out for that too. So if you have these particular programs tied to that development deal, they don't want to cover us because in their mind, most of them are, mental health or homeless, near homeless. They view that as risk. So those have become challenging as well. So then how do you, improve your properties if you can't get insurance? So I will add, Cheyenne, again, if add more to what I've just said, if I missed anything.
So you had a question, do you wanna ask your question first?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so it's really not, as Chiquita stated, it's only affecting 13 of our development credit properties. They are in agency than what our public housing developments are insured for. That's what makes it harder, because we have to go out and deal with all of the insurance companies that everyone else deals with. There are only 2 insurance companies that will insure affordable housing, which are the tax credit properties right now. We go back and forth with struggles, you know, sometimes, like right now, we're having a problem with freezing pipes. That's what their issue is. They want us to make sure that all of our pipes are insulated right now. 4 years ago, we had to go in and put burst-proof hoses on every washing machine. Every year, there's a new thing. But this year, we're hitting a situation where they're saying, no, we don't even want it. And so, when you speak about like a company such as Lloyd's of London,
But this year, just say, this one right now is
Mhm.
prime.
Well,
Most of them for this.
so that
last
one property was crime,
Yeah,
but the property we heard about yesterday was
the pipe,
pipe.
yeah.
And I can send you all, some research about how those crime scores are used. And there was a professor, I think at the University of Virginia, who did a big study on it, and I can get that to all of you. But we're starting to see a trend of there's always something. But a company, let's say like Lloyd's of London, is an unregulated company, and depending on how our deals are written, the banks might not want us to use a company like that. If they're unregulated. Lloyd's of London, that's a company you go to, you want to insure your legs or something like that. But we've had to go to Lloyd's of London for, at one point, one of our carriers didn't want any vacant buildings near our property. And one of our buildings was, and they dropped that building, and we had to insure that one building to Lloyd's of London.
Yeah. And I think the other challenge is every deal we have with tax credits is different. They're not all written the same. All the funding sources are different. So you don't know, as she said, you don't know what reason or what they're gonna come up with. The one that I just shared with you that jumped up 160% was crime rates, the crime score they were using. The one that we're talking about now was frozen pipes, because there were incidents with frozen pipes because of how they were, you know, the way they were built. But out of warranty, that's money that we have to pay to ensure, that we take care of it.
Sure.
So it all depends on the deal, it all depends on the property, and it depends. But again, if it's going in the trend that it's going, it's not going to be sustainable in the future.
Well, we'll put our heads together and we'll figure out a plan. Because the only thing that could possibly happen if it gets to that point is to start selling off properties. And that's something that, you don't want.
So many of these properties have so much, they have obligations, and because there's multiple funding sources and investors,
You can't just list them for sale.
No. So, but that's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, good discussion for sure. Any other questions about the minutes? Still parts of our minutes.
Oh, well, my name is spelled B-B.
We did the minutes already. We
Oh,
voted on
okay. Oh, they were
We're
accepted.
just having discussion.
Oh, I could have went.
Done, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, just a record, my name is spelled wrong.
Which part?
Down,
That's it.
in the minutes.
Oh,
I put one week, I will note that change, as a discussion.
And they've already been approved.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, now you're Bob. You know, you're just Bob with one G from now on, sir.
It's okay, I've been a lot of things. And
It won't happen again, sir.
no,
Okay, that concludes all of my report or discussion.
Okay, anybody have anything else? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I know I'm late. I apologize for that. Still involved with a lot of summer programs. I really want to say a big thank you to everyone that worked on National Night Out. If that was mentioned or not, but
Yeah.
I don't,
But I didn't mention you, so thank you. You also played a big part of that beginning as well.
all of our sites, even Creighton Story, we wanted to make sure that we pull that off, and we did. All 5 sites were well attended, was fed, people were fed, people were involved. So, a bigger thanks to Pastor for getting the police involved, the law enforcement's involved, I would say. But also your staff did a great job.
They did.
Coordinated. I know Chairman Whalen donated stuff,
Yes.
and so did, Kelly Kimbrough. So I wanted to give them a shout out as well. I know they're not here, but as usual, we couldn't fiscally, give stuff, but we gave, how we could. We made sure we coordinated, we got community folks to donate, and we made it happen. So I just wanted to say, that's the way things should be.
They were great, of
Yeah.
course, it does.
Yeah.
And it gives other people ownership of it too.
Yeah.
And it makes it easier going forward. They respect us.
Yep. And people were nervous about it happening, and we pulled it off. So.
Yeah, and I think that after this past year, if I can just throw it in, I think going forward it's gonna be even a little bit easier, because people saw just how effective. The people that I saw, they really loved it. The atmosphere, it was just so jovial. No matter who you talked to, they all wanted to talk, even the vendors that were there.
I do want to also give a big shout out to Sheriff Apple, because he donated. But the reason why I'm doing that is because I think law enforcement needs to step up a little bit more, because this event is also supposed to be law enforcement involved
Of course.
and engaged. And they were in the past, so I'm not sure what's going on, but I think it needs to happen.
When it comes to the law enforcement, most of them have their hands tied when it comes to giving money. Sheriff Apple is one of the exceptions to the rule, because he has his own, if you will, pot of money. Everybody else is operating from a perspective of they can't give money. And what I did last year was I brought in the United States Attorney from the Northern District of New York, and they explained how the seized asset money is actually distributed. And they've got so many strings on it that none of the local law enforcement agencies are able to really touch it, except for certain things. So anyway, what we'll do is we'll have a conversation about that outside of here. Have a conversation about that. I'll let you know exactly how that works, so that there's not an expectation from some of them, that's not going to work. The United States Attorney, they got all that money, but yet they can't touch it locally. Really give it to other people. So you'll see that FBI, same thing. Those guys have to come up with their own. If they have an event and they have giveaways, pens and stuff like that, they got to buy them themselves. The outreach workers. So
I was mainly talking about the APD, because I thought the 3 entities shared that seized money: APD, the district attorney, and the sheriff.
It's available, but they don't share it. When it comes to APD tapping in, I know that the police officers, they got to raise their own money for those hot dogs and stuff. So they don't have these pots of money that they're just giving away. They go and they get donated. As a matter of fact, they're donating to us, but they got 2 restaurants that's actually donating stuff. So I'm not saying that it's not there. We can have a conversation with Chief to see exactly what they would be able to do.
I think what was different this year, and this is what I thought you were saying, is because the National Night Out is really Take Back Your Neighborhood, and the initiative, as I understood it, and understand it, is, it's led by law enforcement with the community, for the purpose of taking back your neighborhood from crime and, from crime on that particular day. And so in the past, we've worked like hand in hand with APD and, planned it, and there was representation at every single site, and it worked that way. It wasn't so much that they donated,
Right.
anything, it was really just their time that was there,
Yep.
and they were there for the full duration of the event. They were assigned to those, particular locations. And I understand short-staffed and, there's some, we're dealing with a totally different challenges today. But I think is that what you?
That's one of it, yeah. That's me.
Referencing?
That's-
They were more involved with the planning in the past.
Yeah.
Somebody that would be involved and, won't beat the dead horse, the horse here, but, New York State Police.
Mhm.
They've stepped up a lot, not just, around the state and the peripheral, but here in the city.
Yeah.
You're seeing it more. As a matter of fact, every place we went, they were there.
Yeah, they were
represented. And they're doing really good. They put a lot of stock in community engagement. And so going forward, we can pull them in. And,
Yeah.
when they come with all their resources.
Yeah.
They come with a lot.
That's the purpose, to work with law enforcement to take back the neighborhood.
And I know, what I explained to them, they're also trying to recruit.
Yeah,
And,
they were mentioning it. Yeah.
and if you're trying to recruit, there is a perception issue with law enforcement in our community. A day like this is a perfect opportunity for you to be involved and be engaged. Not to just recruit, but let the public see you as part of the community, And I think sometimes, I got that message across to all the officers or law enforcement I could talk to. And I told them, I said, this event, not only this event, but this one especially, should be one of those events that they're leading the charge, they're engaged, I told them, be in regular clothes, you don't have to be in your uniform, but anyway, that's just my.
They were out.
No, for facts.
That was good.
We doing for facts?
They were all over the place.
Not,
So I don't personally, I don't support, I think I said this a lot,
are we,
because everyone's giving it out.
But
Somebody's giving it out.
different lists, like, right now, the lists are so specific to each classroom.
It's hard.
If you give out some classes, you need a red notebook and green.
And to be
Yeah.
honest with you, the schools, you probably know this more than I do, the schools got their own, they do,
Well, in general, not.
yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
thinking.
I know Metropolitan had one,
I'm not thinking.
this weekend.
But most of our community schools,
Yeah.
they take care of their students.
Yeah.
So it's not, again, it's a different need, like you're saying. I would more rather see kids get clothes, because that's an issue too. Than school supplies, because,
Or free haircuts.
right, those things are the real need.
Free
School
haircuts
supplies are different.
at our event.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They're gonna have 3
We're in
chairs.
Nicer City,
Where?
In Washington.
Washington Park.
We gotta
Number 9?
Yeah.
work.
Wait, right.
They're trying to get something for girls too. Easy braids, one head will take the whole.
Yeah.
And it's $100 versus 20. $100. To do that?
I'll send you a,
Right.
yeah, from here.
I was being generous. How much?
Cut hair.
I think we have to adjourn.
To cut you off.
Yeah, we've got to adjourn.
How much to cut you?
Okay, and.
You do it yourself?
Motion.
Motion to adjourn the meeting. Okay, Linda, and second,
Mark?
Mark, and, all in favor?
Aye.
We're out of here. Thank you.